Happy noon hour, everyone in PhotoShelter land. This is Alan Murabayashi with Sarah Jacobs talking to you again from Happy Hour Live. They say that as you get older, time flies. And I can't believe we're on our fourth Happy Hour Live already. How is it the end of February?
I don't know, but it flew by for me too, Alan, don't worry.
Okay. Yeah, Sarah being very much my junior. But hey, Sarah, your situation looks a lot better this week.
Yes, I've got some nice light. I'm in our 3 art room upstairs, and I'm by a window, which is great.
So we're really stepping it up.
Indeed.
So that's good. Well, we thought that we weren't maybe going to do it, or we thought maybe you were going to do it by yourself.
No.
But then we said, why don't we just do it on Thursday instead of Friday and alleviate all the stress?
Yes, good plan on both our parts.
So whenever we're not going to be able to do it on Friday, we'll do it on Thursday.
Yep.
Which seems like a perfectly... Yeah, you can watch it whenever you want.
Yeah, we're recording it. Watch it anytime.
In fact, you're probably watching the recording right now. As we speak. Well, with that, why don't we jump in once I find the old share screen again. And last week we started with World Press Photo winners. And they had just been announced on Friday, a few hours before we went live. And a few things came out that I wanted to talk about today. The first was the selection of John Stanmeyer's image of these African migrants in Djibouti trying to catch a cell signal. And I went back and I wrote this blog post. Last year, as you may recall, last year's winner to me looked really overly retouched. And I wrote a blog post called "Why do movie contest winners look like? Why do photo contest winners look like movie posters?" It kind of went into the detail about the kind of the lighting that looked very kind of movie poster-ish to me. And then this year, this also looks maybe almost like a cell phone ad.
Yeah.
But kind of in a great way because it's actually a not posed, real photojournalism photo. I went back because there was a little bit of controversy about not picking a hard news photo, whatever that means, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I went back and I looked at all the winners from when they started. I think it was 1955, something like that. And they're all, starving children, or somebody like in major grief from some terrible tragedy, or somebody like in a war zone. And we often hear with photojournalism, it's like, I don't want to look at it. It's like too depressing. Why do I want to look at that? So there was a little bit of controversy over picking a not hard news photo, but this is a gorgeous photo. And I just think that the story behind it about these migrants trying to catch a cell signal, a cheaper cell signal from neighboring Somalia, is such a wonderful story. And John Stanmeyer said, it seemed so apropos because I was away from my family, missing them, wanting to contact them, and here's the same thing going on.
Wow. Yeah, it's such a beautiful image. It's a futuristic image, and I love it for that.
And so I was looking at this as everyone did, and in most places where it was shown, it was kind of at this size, 600, 700 pixels wide. Looks pretty cool. Looks like a straight silhouette. Then on the National Geographic Proof website, I see a larger version of it, and all of a sudden, there's a lot of detail in the figure. In the main figure here in the center, you can actually, I'm sure it's hard to see on the Hangout, but we'll post a link later on. There's actually tone in his shirt, and he is actually the sharpest person in the scene, and everyone in the foreground and the background are actually a little bit blurred.
Mm.
As you might expect, since he's shooting open, wide open in the middle of the night under the moonlight.
Right.
But it turns out to be even a more gorgeous photo, in my opinion, as a result of that. So, what little controversy exists around the fact that it's not a hard news photo, whatever that means, I think is obliterated by the fact that it's a great story that tells kind of a tale of the time.
Yeah.
And, this is Djibouti near Somalia, but how many times have you tried to catch a cell signal in New York City? you know, kind of
Yeah.
like moving your phone. Everybody knows what this feels like when you're I mean, sure, these guys are trying to contact their families, and maybe I'm just trying to send you a text, Sarah.
Right.
But it's still about communication,
Right.
is all I'm saying.
Yeah, absolutely. It's beautiful.
And then an hour or two after we did our happy hour live last week, James Estrin from the New York Times came on board and reported that 8% of the finalists in the World Press Photo Contest were disqualified for manipulation.
Wow.
And this year, they apparently brought in a third-party expert, forensic expert, to analyze the photos. So they took the raw. They're one of the few contests that actually requires you to submit raws with your entry, and they've done that since 2010. And so this year they brought in an expert to analyze the photos, and I was kind of blown away by this number, because they didn't do it in the previous rounds. In the preliminary rounds, they didn't do this forensic analysis because it's just
There's too many images.
Yeah, there are 98,000 images or something like that. Too many images, too much of a pain. But it made me think, like, how many of those images then of the 98,000 that weren't screened actually had manipulation issues with them?
Right.
And then I said, well, if that's the case, of the 98,000 that were submitted, let's say 8% of them do have problems, well, then how many of the images that we see in the news on a daily basis are manipulated as well? And then I kind of went a little batty, because that's, we talk about truth and veracity in photojournalism to the extent that we can. Obviously, there's the whole argument of point of view and darkroom techniques and da-da-da-da, but you still don't expect photojournalists to be taking things out of a scene.
Right.
And cloning, or taking something that's obviously very bright and making it super dark in the scene. Like, you don't want that to be happening. I don't want that. I don't know about the general public, but I don't want that to be happening in my news photos.
No. Now you mentioned that World Press Photo should outline what they mean when they say you can't manipulate your photographs, so that photographers entering the contest understand the guidelines, and so they don't enter photos that have been manipulated. Do you really think that photographers are forgetting as they're collecting entries, oh, I'm not sure if I manipulated this picture or not. Well, I'll just enter it. Do you think they're forgetting when they're entering? No,
I mean, you have a good point, because most, knowing some photographers who have gone through the whole photo contest cycle every year, if you will.
Uh-huh.
What they transmit over the wire, if they're like a wire photographer, what they transmit over the wire isn't the image that they usually submit to the contest. They spend a lot more time editing a sequence and also retouching, and sometimes they'll send it out to professional retouchers, because maybe retouching isn't their bag, right?
Okay.
So do I think that they're forgetting? No, I don't think they're forgetting. But I think the constant reminder to photographers that this is not okay, and showing, I know there's privacy issues aside, but I think showing the list of people who are eliminated because of manipulation is going to act as a deterrent.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not to cause problems for those photographers per se, but I think a little bit of a punitive action is necessary so people stop. It's like, if you want people to stop speeding, then tag people for speeding.
Right. Yeah.
There's got to be some sort of punishment, or some sort of like notice for people to want to change their behavior.
Yeah. Yeah, I think notice is probably a better word than punishment.
Okay, let's go with notice.
What contest do you think is going to follow suit with this, using outside sources to check images?
I saw NPPA made an announcement following this disclosure that 8% had been disqualified, and NPPA said we're not planning on doing any sort of collecting raws.
Okay.
They did say we really scrutinize the image, and we're trying to stay on top of it.
Right.
And I think that if you're going to be a photo contest organization of the future, in the same way that in sports they test for steroids and enhancements, etc., you got to get on the horse at some point and address that in a systematic way, not in a, well, this looks kind of funky, so let's ask the photographer about it.
Right, because you just don't know.
You don't know.
Yeah, you don't know. Well, I think with this winning image and their movement towards trying to get clean images, WPP is doing a great job.
Yeah. I mean, we talked about them in the photo contest guide in the past being kind of like a really good example of a photo contest that has great exposure. They're well respected, etc. So I'm glad to see that they're taking these steps to sort of preserve the credibility of the contest. So that was great to see.
Yeah.
Shifting gears away from photo contests, it was Fashion Week, or I guess is it still Fashion Week in New York?
No.
They call it a week, but it lasts for forever. I was at a restaurant the other day, and they said, "Oh, it's Restaurant Week. We have all of these specials." It turns out Restaurant Week is a month, which I think I knew, but it was still kind of weird to hear that. Oh yeah, it's gonna last forever. Anyway, here's the New York Times take on Fashion Week. Now, you and I have both seen Fashion Week coverage in various online destinations before.
Yeah.
And my biggest complaint with it is it's kind of hard to get a sense of the total collection.
Yeah, absolutely.
To the extent that anyone really cares about that, but you kind of want to see if you're looking for a color trend or some sort of sartorial cut trend, maybe you want to see stuff all together. That's just me. So I come across this yesterday. Great. So walk us through this, Sarah.
Oh, well, this layout is amazing, and like you said, Alan, actually lets you experience the entire collection in one visual sweep here. And then you can open up any image that you come across and see it larger, go through all of it. It really helps you see the designer's aesthetic in full. It's great.
Yeah, and I know that in speaking to the New York Times previously, they have a pretty big digital team that works on creating kind of cool things on the web. They want to be an innovator in terms of presentation of information on the web. And look at this Proenza Schuller. That's cool seeing it that way. And then at the very bottom, which I didn't quite get, but I appreciate the effort there. They have this fashion fingerprint. So they're taking all of the colors and they're kind of throwing them together, I guess so that you can see sort of the color palette.
Yeah, that's like an art director's dream to have that.
Right.
Yeah.
So for example, that Marc Jacobs, which was the top, you kind of see these muted purples and light blues. And then for some other ones, the reds that are coming through. So it was very, very interesting to see data presented this way. I dug it. And then Fashion Week again on Racked, the New York Racked website, a cool article by Tiffany Yanetta about how Instagram changed everything. And I love Instagram. And I follow you on Instagram. You follow me, and we like each other's photos sometimes.
Sometimes.
But it's interesting to see how brands are really counting on. I guess maybe last year they were counting on bloggers, but this year they're counting on Instagrammers to kind of come in. And in fact, some brands will hire Instagram companies like Mobile Media Lab, etc., to come by an Instagram. In part because they are supposed to be the experts with social media, and they're good at Instagram photography, but also because they have these massive followings. So it's just interesting to see the shift of, previously you would go to Fashion Week and nobody would see anything because it would take 3 months before the photos came out back in the old print publishing days.
Right.
And then you slowly kind of saw stuff from the bloggers. Now you're seeing things nearly in real time.
Mm-hmm.
And in some cases, some of these companies are doing live broadcasts from their fashion shows.
Yeah.
And then everyone gets all excited about the new outfit, which you can't get for 3 months
right.
or 6 months.
Right. I always have to remind myself that the spring New York Fashion Week is about fall fashion.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You found a little piece here about Maurizio Catalan.
Ah, yes. Yes, this is a great interview between Times director of photography Kara Polak and New York Magazine's Jody Kwan. They did a great spread. If you didn't pick up New York Mag's issue this week, they have an amazing spread. It's just such a surreal take on fashion, and Jody had some great things to say about working with this photographer, including just, giving him all free access, to whatever he wanted to do creatively, which is so important to give to artists, and Jody knows that, and it really comes across in this spread. I mean, these pictures are bizarre. There's one of a model giving a thumbs up and smiling while she's laying in dust. And you're just like, wait, is this about fashion or is this, but it's about everything, and that's what's so great about it.
What is fashion?
Well, as Jody says, a great fashion photograph should just be a great photograph, and it should speak to all arts, which is very true. Look at that. She's just smiling, laying on the ground.
And like rubble.
Yeah. But yeah, she does say that, fashion should be the secondary thing about what you remember about the images, and this spread is a great example of that.
The issue of trusting the photographer, you hear that a lot. We wish the photo editors or the art directors would just trust the photographer a little bit more. I think it's a little easier to trust the photographer when you're Jody Kwan with Jody Kwan's budget and have access to the top people.
Mm.
It's a little bit different if you're, in Podunk Town, nowhere, and some photographer comes in whose work you don't know, and you're like, hey man, just trust me. Like, no way. I'm gonna give you some direction,
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. No, these are top-notch photographers. Jody knew what she was doing picking them.
Yeah, Jody Kwan, she was at the New York Magazine, then she left for a little while, then she came back, and I mean, they have always had just great photography. So kudos to Jody and her team.
Yeah.
Petapixel, there's always some sort of legal thingamajig going on in the world of photography, usually around copyright infringement of some sort. Obviously, intellectual property is kind of the legal issue for photographers. Well, here's a case that Petapixel was reporting about a magazine, Survival Magazine. I don't know if you renewed your subscription this year for Survival Magazine.
Oh, I did not.
Oh, you didn't? Okay. Well, Survival Magazine has a Facebook page, and they posted a photo of chickens or hens. I can't tell the difference because I'm a city boy. And eggs in the foreground, etc. And this woman came across the photo and said, "Hey, that's weird. That photo looks like mine, and those chickens look like my chickens." So they apparently, Survival Magazine had poached this photo, no pun intended, had poached this photo, posted it on their Facebook page, then spent money to boost the post. So if you know with Facebook, you can spend money so more people see it. So they apparently boosted the post. Kathy comes into this image, and she says, hey guys, I think there's a problem here. That's actually my photo in my backyard and my chickens, and I don't think you licensed it. They don't do anything. She sends down a DMCA takedown notice, Digital Millennium Copyright Act takedown notice, which is the proper way, incidentally, to take down copyrighted images off of a website.
Well, it's important to note that she's also an attorney.
Ah, yes. She's an attorney, yeah. But I like the fact that she kind of took the high road, right? She said maybe maybe the photo is being licensed through another channel that I'm unaware of. And they come back with an email after they get the takedown notice and said, "You're an asshole, Kathy," was the subject, and then call her an a-hole like several more times in the letter. Which is just, I mean,
oof.
You know, as I think we said before in another happy hour, the fact of life is people are going to rip off your photo. And it's one thing for an individual, like a teenager to pull your chicken's photo and put it as their cover image on Facebook, which is more like homage than anything else.
Right.
It's another
yeah.
for a business that makes money to take an image, then deny that there's any impropriety, then call you an asshole. Like, really?
That's not okay.
That's not okay.
No.
And then there was this other controversy about the color run. I don't know if you saw this color run, but it's also referenced in this article. But the color run is this race where they throw all of the colored powder at you. That is supposed to sort of simulate a festival in India. But I don't know. I mean, all that fine powder can't be good for your lungs. But anyway, people love it. Some photographer named Max, or maybe his last name was Max, or I can't remember exactly. He took a photo there as a student. Color Run contacts him, says, "Hey, we would love to post this on our Facebook page." Then one day he walks into like the Sports Authority store and he sees his photo on a display. And he's like, "Hey, what the heck?" He says he puts his open letter up and he starts a crowdfunding thing, saying, "Hey man, the Color Run's trying to rip me off. Help me pay for my legal defense." They finally come to a resolution, and then all of this other stuff comes out about how Color Run offered him $30K, which he summarily rejected, and then asked for like $300,000. He didn't register the copyright. He didn't really reveal the whole story, like the fact that Color Run was actually trying to negotiate with him, to the best that I can glean, right? You never really know all the facts here. But I just thought, man, the whole intellectual property thing is so shady in so many ways. I mean, it's clear cut, obviously, right? If you take the photo and someone steals it, that's a pretty clear cut thing. But everyone, like, hey man, if you don't register your copyright, and then the usage, you're only eligible for usage, then why are you suing for $300,000? If they put the image in a display ad, that's worth like, I don't know, like $500, depending on how many that they build. So I'm glad it came to a resolution. I'm glad it didn't have to go to the courts. It would have been better for Max to have been a little bit more transparent, particularly because he was asking for crowdfunding while he was not being truthful with people to the extent that we know. Whatever the case is, we're happy that it was resolved. Whew. I got all excited about that. Hey, how do you feel about microstock?
Oh, I love it. I love Stock-C. Stock-C.
Bruce Livingston, who started iStock Photo, which some people, Sarah, say was kind of the beginning of the end of stock photography. Mm-hmm. But he left Getty. He sold iStock Photo for $50 million to Getty. He stuck around for several years. I'm sure there was some sort of contract in place, and then he stuck around for a few years. And then he started a site called Stock-C where they're doing 90% payouts, which is obviously unheard of in the industry because I think Getty, depending on who you are, is paying more like 30.
Yeah, 30.
90 sounds, as a business owner myself, sounds almost impossible, to be honest with you.
Mm.
Now,
but to a photographer, it sounds pretty damn good.
Yeah, but you gotta, I mean, I think you need to have a little healthy dose of skepticism. Now, obviously, he's a smart dude. He started iStock. Mm-hmm. I mean, he basically almost created, I mean, arguably, he created the category of microstock. He's saying he wants to do good for photographers, which is fantastic. Well, you might recall, you weren't here yet, but many years ago, I think about 5 or 6 years ago, we tried to create a marketplace for photography called the PhotoShelter Collection. We started at 50%, or I think we might have even started at 60% for the photographer. But the costs of marketing are so high. Now, the only difference was that we also had rights-managed photography and we had a sales staff. Because I feel like every time you want to sell rights managed in volume, somebody's going to want to cut a deal. Stock-C, on the other hand, is doing royalty free. There's no negotiation. Here's the price. It's $100, $200, $300, depending on the collection, depending on the size, depending on, yeah. And they're only letting 500 new photographers a year into the collection. So it's kind of a club.
Right. I know that I was reading about their initiation process, and it sounds very rigorous. You know, it's
there's like hazing. No.
Yeah, there's no, but it is sort of like a cool kids club, you know, that you want to join as a photographer.
Yeah. And I think they said that every photographer becomes a shareholder.
Yes, they did.
And the shareholders get to vote who gets to lead the organization, and for the time being, Bruce gets to lead the organization. Well, thank God he is the founder. But he's trying to be, I mean, I think at a certain point, you know, the guy's obviously wealthy at this point. I think at a certain point you're just like, okay, I'm just going to try something completely crazy because I personally don't have that much to lose.
Right.
So let's give photographers 90%. Let's let them vote me in or out like a Survivor game.
Yeah.
And see what happens. Well, I hope Stocksy's successful. I would love to see. I mean, it's still going to be kind of a private club, obviously, if they continue to do 500 photographers max. And at some point, you know, are they going to have the same sort of glut of photography problem that everyone else has? I don't know, but I think it's a great thing for photographers as long as they can last.
Mm-hmm.
You brought up Sean Locke.
Oh yeah, because Sean Locke is on, you know, uses Stocksy, but he also uses PhotoShelter to sell a lot of his stock photography.
Well, as we've always said, if you're bringing people to your website, there's no reason why you shouldn't benefit directly from that.
Yeah.
So obviously we're huge advocates for having sales capability from your website, as Sean does at seanlockphotography.photoshelter.com.
Yep.
Remember Tyler Shields, who spoke at our Luminance conference?
I do.
That guy was wild.
He was. He definitely was. He is a character.
I mean, how could a photographer is he? Jury's out. Nobody knows, right?
Yeah, that's always up for debate, I guess.
I think it's tough because when you try to be a personality simultaneous to being a photographer, people are going to be a little more skeptical. And he's definitely a personality, right? He shoots all his Hollywood friends. He's dating Clint Eastwood's daughter or something like that, who's a model. Well, he refused to shoot. Which Kardashian was it?
Kim, right?
Kim. Oh, it was Kim.
Yeah.
He refused to shoot Kim Kardashian for Vogue.
I mean, if Vogue is asking him to shoot a cover, then he probably should have said yes.
Unless, again, he's like rich and he doesn't care.
Right. See, that's true. I mean, I'm glad that there are some photographers out there that are making enough where they can actually turn down shoots for Vogue. I mean, that's cool. That's good.
And arguably, does he create more press for himself by turning it down than he does if he stuck and shot it?
No, I don't think so.
No?
No, because he could have taken some crazy controversial photo of Kim Kardashian. And,
that's already been done. That's already been done.
I mean, true, I guess. Yeah.
You brought up this case.
Yes, well, that reminded me of Jürgen Teller, who shoots a lot for Marc Jacobs, refused to shoot the most recent campaign that was featuring Miley Cyrus. Another, photographer refusing because of the model. And I'm starting to think, who's the real divas here? Is it the photographers or the subjects, the celebs?
Interesting.
I know.
Interesting. Yeah, these celebrity photographers, it's just like a different world, though, They really just operate in a different world than most photographers out there.
Yeah.
I mean, which photographer, even successful photographers, who can afford to turn down a job? That's crazy.
I know. That's what I'm saying. I mean, I'm glad to hear that some people are able to do it, but yeah.
I feel like every week we have to talk about the Sony QX100.
Just every week. Let's just keep bringing it back up.
There's always something. Now, the Sony QX100, for those of you who don't know, is this camera that Sony came out with last year that looks like a lens. And it's supposed to be paired up with your phone, your mobile phone. So the mobile phone acts as the LCD screen. There's apparently this place called Northlands in New Jersey, which has been getting a lot of press. This guy, whose head you can see here, built this entire place for his train sets. He's got apparently like the largest train set collection, and he does have a store that operates kind of in front of it, but it's sort of like, if you're into trains, model trains, this is the place to go. So Sony commissioned photographers go in there with the QX100, and they have this whole sort of dramatic, like, we're taking it out of our Pelican cases. You know, and normally a Pelican case, you're going to have like a huge rig and da-da-da, and the QX100 looks like those half cans of soda we had when I was a kid. Yeah. It's literally that. It's like a big can of makeup or something like that. And they show all this stuff about, you know, the photographers rappelling into this fake ravine to set up the shot. And there's all this like you know, cutesy indie piano music playing behind the whole soundtrack. And it's set up like who's that filmmaker that does, you know, all those quirky movies?
Wes Anderson?
Wes Anderson. It feels like a whole Wes Anderson thing, right?
Yeah.
And then at the end, okay, go ahead.
Oh well, it just warmed my heart. This man making all these model trains. I mean,
the man's amazing, and he plays the organ at the end, and he's kind of a badass on the organ too.
Very talented man.
But you know, when you look at the images at the end, they're like, oh yeah, man, we went in there with our Pelican cases and our QX100s, and it's like any camera on a macro setting could have taken those photos.
Oh.
So again, like.
But would it have had the, you know, ability to go into those tight little crevices?
Into the tunnels.
Yeah.
I don't know about that. Yeah.
See, I think that's why this is special for this type of project. Why the Sony works.
They're like, if you ever need to shoot a miniature train land, you need the QX100.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
All right, I'm down with that. That's cool. And again, you know, I have a Sony RX1, which I love to death. So I'm not poo-pooing all of Sony. You know, I own a lot of Sony stuff in my house, but I just I didn't think the QX100 kind of hit it out of the park. All right, your Kickstarter of the week.
Oh yeah, I want them to make it, and they only have 2 weeks, so everybody check this out. I've been following the blog Massless for a while now. It's been online for like a little over 4 years. And it was a great little blog, and it ran an interview with a different photographer every day. And then it decided to go print. And they did a Kickstarter for that, and it was successful. And he sells the zine online and also does a lot of appearances at, you know, New York zine presentations and all that. But now he's running one for issue number 3. And Ramka and Grace, they're just the cutest couple, and they've set out on their biggest venture, which is issue number 3, and it's over 118 photographers and their depictions of America. And it looks great. I'm definitely going to donate and buy one.
Let me ask you a question. I don't doubt that it's a great project and a great site, but to go back to print, is that kind of a vanity thing to do in this day and age? To
go from a blog to then go to print?
Yeah. And then have to crowdfund to fund it. Like, it's not a self-sustaining thing if for every issue you have to raise $25,000.
That's true. Well, this is definitely the most that they've ever had to raise.
I'm sure it's going to be great. I mean, it's just a matter of do we really need that printed thing to add credibility, or is there some sort of philosophical thing about the permanence of the photo and the print and that we need to be aware of?
There's definitely value in the photographers that he's finding. Like, for example, he published Bobby Daugherty way before he was shooting for New York Mag and all that. So if you have a print edition of Massless issue 1, that's going to be worth more than when you bought it.
All right, I'm in.
He's a good curator and editor. So yeah, there is value in this, I think.
Hey, PhotoShelter's heading down to Austin for the Texas Photo Roundup. We were there last year, and we ate a lot of barbecue.
Yes, we did.
A lot of barbecue.
This is a great event. If you're down in Texas, you should definitely try to go. We're going to be giving a presentation on guerrilla marketing, and also going to have a Q&A for you to go in and learn all about PhotoShelter and how it works and set one up for yourself.
Shout out to Jasmine DeFore, friend of PhotoShelter, who this is kind of her baby. She kind of conceived of it and is the executive producer or whatever we call those people nowadays.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll get to go next year and have more barbecue. That
would be great.
More photo seminars, etc. Here's one with PhotoShelter user Annie Griffith.
Yeah.
Griffiths.
Griffiths. Yeah, this is happening at the Lighthouse International in New York on March 2nd. And it sounds like a really great way to just go and hear two masters talk about photography and how to find your eye. Sounds really interesting.
You know, I'm looking at this photo, a daring swim in the Devil's Pool on the edge of Victoria Falls, photo by Annie Griffiths. Like, it's hard to get water to look that way because the angle of the light has to be proper.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So, again, you could shoot any guy standing in the water, but to get this shot, you probably have like 10 minutes during the day that you could get this shot. Maybe even less.
Yeah, totally.
It's just good to see good photography. That's all I want to say. Speaking of another Nat Geo friend of PhotoShelter photographer, Amy Vitali is using the site indievoices. And here's an interesting, it's a project to kind of take on poaching. And you know, I had a really interesting Skype call with Jim Richardson, who's a very well-known National Geographic photographer, and he pointed out the fact that a lot of the photographers who are successful kind of on social media and whatnot are not objective reporters anymore. They are advocates for these causes, and they become also experts in these different causes. And so that they're not asked, for example, to come present at some seminar to show their photos. They're asked to come to show their photos and be the expert on the topic, which I think in a way is kind of brilliant because it just makes that photographer that much more valuable. And the photographer also becomes the face of the cause in a lot of cases. So, you know, if you know, we talked about veracity and whatnot at the top of the show, but I don't think there's anything wrong with having a point of view and becoming a part of the story in the sense that you're an expert and you're there and it's something that you believe in.
Mm-hmm.
That's obviously a pretty progressive view when it comes to news. But you know, they're reporting on a story that's important to them, and if you're going to spend hours and hours away from home, days and days, weeks and weeks, months and months, you probably should sort of be into the topic. And Sarah, isn't that what they always say? Pick a personal project that you care about so that it'll sustain. Isn't that what we always hear?
Yeah, absolutely.
So Amy Vitali, 14 days left. She already met her goal, but hey, you know, it's a great project. If you love baby rhinoceroses like I do, check that out at indievoice.es, indievoices. Or, you know, just Google it. It'll come up. We have one last story today. Sarah berated me. Well, not berated. That's a little strong. Sarah said, let's end on something happy, because last week we ended on cancer and photos of cancer. On Valentine's Day, no less, right? So that was probably not the best planning on my part.
No.
But this week we found the Korean high school that allows anything goes in the yearbook with hilarious results.
Oh,
now,
man.
I don't know about your high school, but we would not have been allowed to do this.
No.
But it seems like, you know, when you look at these photos, it seems like, well, I don't know about flipping the bird, but a lot of the photos seem to be taken outside in the same area, which lead me to believe maybe all of this happened on one day. And so even though anything goes, you know, here's like the Korean farmer guy, even though anything goes, they kind of knew what was coming. And maybe if something was too edgy, they'd said, yo, man, you got to tone it down. But these are hilarious.
They're hilarious. I really question, is this real, Alan? Is this real?
Yeah, I mean, who knows? I hope it is.
I really hope so too.
You know, maybe it was like a student-produced yearbook that wasn't the official yearbook, so they could do whatever they wanted.
Either way,
Either way, it's
Pat on their
awesome.
back. Yeah.
Pretty awesome. So, we've seen a lot of funny photo projects come along. This was definitely the funniest of last week.
Absolutely.
I
What
love
would
this
you
one.
have done to pose, Alan?
God, there's so many. I own a lot of costumes just because.
Yeah.
So who
Because you
who
host a lot of
knows?
themed parties. Yes.
And I just have a box of wigs and stuff. I mean, I could have done a lot. With advance notice, I could really put something quite phenomenal together.
I don't doubt it.
Sarah, you're going to be gone next week.
I am. Yes. You'll need to find a co-host.
Or people will just have to listen to my voice the whole time and see my face the whole time. Because I'm going to do it on Thursday again.
Okay.
So if you're listening to this and you're looking for a happy hour on Friday, we kind of start the party early. We're going to do it on Thursday. Not all the time. You just have to look for the schedule.
Yeah. We post it on the Facebook and PhotoShelter Twitter.
We will have all the links that we talked about today on the blog at blog.photoshelter.com in case you want to check those out in depth. But Sarah, thanks again for another great show.
Thank you.
And for Sarah Jacobs, this is Alan Murabayashi. Thank you for joining us for Happy Hour Live. Have a great day.